Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Culbreth Corner. I'm your host, John Culbreth. I want to talk about the way we make decisions for
Horn voicings.
Over the years, we've had the task of fitting horns into a lot of different contexts. Whether it's playing a lead line in an instrumental, doubling the guitars for maximum power, counter melodies on a vocal track, contributing to the overall vibe, or
Full-on horn section takeover.
So clearly there's a lot of ways to use a horn section, and it's up to us as arrangers and orchestrators to decide what to do. When it comes down to it, to me, it's all about texture. So step one, the absolute most important question to ask yourself is, what role are the horns playing in this moment? What's the vibe of the section so far? When you know that, when you know what role you're supposed to be serving in the song as a whole, you can answer the question, what texture can we add that contributes to or augments the section in an appropriate way? This helps us keep the overall composition in mind and informs us on how we might want to voice the horns. So I'm going to go through a few instances of different horn voicings throughout the Naughty Professor discography and dissect them for you a little bit. So for the first example, I want to start with the tune Without a Trace. So for that section, when I was writing these horn parts, I wanted it to open up the harmonic universe of the tune and kind of introduce more of an atmospheric chordal presence that followed the bass motion. So it's a 4-voice line. Everyone's on a different note for that whole thing because it's just padding it out. It's just about creating that texture that's not a new melodic idea. It's just sort of opening up the world and coloring the air around everything a little bit. And that changes a little bit in the next section, so it gets a little bit more melodic here. Okay, so for that, that's pretty voiced out. There's no tension really. Pretty much just the triad. But then the next line is unison, just for maximum effect. Partially because the trumpets go down in pitch, and so that kind of it makes that line more prominent, and then it opens up at the end of the line. So it kind of opens up into a chord at the end of it, so that's a nice little effect. But the line itself, we wanted to have that power in there. And then chord. So there we're kind of just acting as a chordal instrument. And as Eric goes off, or Benny, I guess he prefers, goes off and starts playing the improvised stuff, we're pretty much just outlining the chord as a rhythm section roll. So bum ba da da dun dun dun, we're all voicing out different voicings there. Something I want to point out is that when we're writing out voicings and we want to hit more extensions like the 7 or the 9, I think it's good to avoid just stacking directly on top of each other, the partials. So like 1, 3, 5, or, well, when it's 7 chords, it's like 3, 5, 7, or 5, 7, 3. 5, 7, 3 is a little bit better, but whenever it's just a triad, especially with 7 chords, sometimes that can feel a little bit weak, and it doesn't necessarily accomplish the color that I like to hear. So I'll usually either space them out or invert the triad just so it's not like 3, 5, 7 like right on top of each other, because most of the time that's not the vibe, especially on dominant chords, but that's not in this song. So in this next section, this is where we really all join together on the same line in octaves for just maximum laser focus on one line, just because it's a little bit faster, and the point isn't to create color, it's to articulate this line as clearly as possible. So that line was all in octaves, and I think it was a good choice to do that because any sort of color is getting lost in there because of the intensity of the line. So anytime that there's an intense, powerful line that kind of takes the forefront, especially if it's fast, we often choose to go with the octaves instead of having a harmony. Although, watch us come out with a tune next year where we play some crazy fast shit and it's all harmonized. So that's just an example. Okay, next tune. This next song is called Stolen Ones, featuring Mikea Jovan on vocals. So our role in this song was much more subdued and supportive. So the way that we wanted to contribute to this was a lot more harmony-based, kind of towed the line between just hit-based stuff, and also we put in a few little lines in there, sort of Roy Hargrove-esque, lower, more subdued lines and voicings that were more 4th and 5th based, to kind of create that non-tense feeling. It just kind of it creates this space that doesn't push it in any one direction as much. It just kind of supports and like adds a little bit of air around everything. So here's our lines. So in that section, we're kind of just adding an almost vocal-like melody to the rhythmic motion, so that texture is softer and darker, and I think that was exactly what this section needed. Okay, so for the next song, what is the next song? There comes a time in every young horn player's life where they wish they were a guitar player. We made the decision to emulate a guitar's power chords as the horn section in this next song, Prune Juice. In the B section of this song, we get kind of metal, and the guitar starts playing power chords, and the horns eventually jump right in. So that adds a different type of power than just unison, because it builds out the foundation of that chord to add just a little more robustness to the overall thing. So it kind of helps that bass register shimmer in a different way that just makes it more substantial when you put that 5th in there. So here is the Naughty Horns pretending to be a guitar player. Well, I really went overboard. I wonder if I'm going to edit that out. Anyway, power chords. It's not super nuanced. We're not trying to be delicate or dark. Well, we are trying to be dark, but we're not trying to be melancholy. It's more about like anger and distortion and like, you know, being pissed off. So that's when we go power chords as a horn section. This next song is going to demonstrate another texture that I really like, which is note clusters and seconds, either major or minor seconds, within a 3-horn voicing. This song is called Pleiades, and it starts out like this. So that type of texture, there were a lot of major seconds in there. There might have been a few minor seconds, but that sort of texture adds a really nice rub that I particularly like in a horn section. There's an upper note and then there's 2 lower notes that's where the second is, because the ear gets directed towards the top note and tends to register the lower notes as extra information that's like supplementary sometimes. So it's just kind of creating this shape around the top note. There's a little more tension, adding just a little bit of spice in there. And there's another section in this tune that we really go overboard with the seconds. And I'm gonna show you that right now. These are the notes. Okay, so that section was pretty much all parallel. I hope that wasn't like a gang sign or something. You see what I'm doing, right? It's the top note and then it's the seconds that are like down here. Like that's the shape of the chord. Maybe I'll put a little graphic instead. That's the chord shape. So that sort of rub is what is accomplished with major and minor seconds, and specifically diatonically moving up and down a mode where the voicing is that shape. So it changes whether or not it's a major second or a minor second based on where you are in the mode, but it's moving diatonically, so it's kind of, anyway, that's the effect that achieves. A little bit more rub, almost like mystery kind of vibes. Okay, so I've got one more song for you, and this is the full-on horn takeover. So this is actually a pretty good example of what adding voicings to a chord sounds like. So in this example, it starts out with the saxophones, and then as we add voicings, we also add voices. So it starts out with only 2 voices, then it's 4 voices, then it's 6 voices. So you can kind of get a sense of how it's escalating both in energy and in harmonic complexity in this little intro here. Isn't that cool? I'm gonna fast forward to the end of this song where it really goes off, and you'll just kind of hear the what it sounds like when there's a ton of horns playing, very free-flowing in terms of orchestration here. All right, thanks for sticking around with me. This has been Culbreth Corner, and I hope you learned something or at least were mildly entertained. See you next time.